Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I have a trip report out of Kings Island on July 7th and 8th in 2023. This is my Kings Island trip report. So starting with this trip report, and all of my other trip reports in the future for new parks, I will start off with the coasters and lead into my general thoughts about the park. Now let's start off with my opinions on the coasters I rode at Kings Island. Also, right before I start with my opinions on the coasters, I will be going in alphabetical order, and I did not ride two coasters, in Vertigo and Flying Ace Aerial Chase. With this out of the way, let's start with Adventure Express. This was the Aero Mine Train, and not a huge fan for me. I know, it's an Aero Mine Train, so I can't expect the world from this, but I expect a smooth ride with a nice setting. Well, I guess the setting was okay. Yeah, I don't know. The ride was really janky like most Aero coasters, but it was surprisingly rough like a lot of Aero coasters. I mean, the theming was decent, but I was pretty disappointed as a whole. But hey, what are you gonna do? Just not the greatest experience, and for that, I would say it's pretty mediocre. I only rode this one time, so hey, I got the credit at least. Moving on to the next coaster, Backlot Stunt Coaster. Now, I'm going to make a whole video on this ride, but I really like this Premier Rides Family Launch Coaster. The theming was a nice effort, and I wasn't expecting the ending with the dark portion, but it's a fun ride. The helix right after the launch almost made me gray out, but I managed. This is a great ride, and a nice family coaster for a newer thrill seeker. Also, shout out to this ride for only having a lap bar and no seatbelt. I mean, no big deal at all, but if I remember correctly, the ride had no seatbelt, so it was more mildly spacious. But anyway, I only ended up riding this once, but I rode the one at King's Dominion, but that's another story for another day. Moving on to the next coaster, Banshee. Yeah, I have a gripe with this ride. Before saying it, this is a B&M inverted coaster. I must say, this is my favorite inverted coaster out of the three I've ridden. It was a decently smooth, intense ride, and it provided all different types of forces. This ride was most certainly the most intense coaster of the day, as most inverts are intense though. Now, my personal gripe with this coaster. We boarded the tram like normal, me and my dad. I zipped up my zipper pocket with my phone in it. However, my dad only had one pair of zipper shorts, and he used them the day before. So as many of you may be thinking, my dad lost his phone on Banshee. I think it fell out on the slow-moving inversion, but anyways, we got it back a few days later, and it looks like this. Now that's exactly why you wear zipper pockets right there. Now after that, obviously, my dad didn't want to ride it again, and lucky for him, I didn't want to ride it again, so we just rode Banshee once. Now my dad losing his phone was entirely his fault, but I thought I'd bring it up. Now on to the next coaster. The next coaster I rode was Bat, the Aero Suspended Coaster. This is a fun ride hidden in the back of the park. It barely had a line, so we rode it the second day, but we wanted to ride it the first day. But someone decided to barf pineapples up in the station, and it shut the ride down for quite a while. Anyways, this ride is some good fun. It was more intense than I was expecting, and it was pretty short, but it is a nice family coaster for the beginner thrill seeker. I only rode this once. On to the next coaster. Beast is the next coaster. The most anticipated coaster of 2023 was a great ride in my opinion. This in-house wooden coaster was a long, rough, and fun ride. People may say the ride is too rough, but I can appreciate the roughness. It adds to the classic wooden coaster feel. The ride was fast for a wooden coaster of that age, too. I ended up getting a sunset ride on the Beast, and it was better than a normal ride. I know the night rides are famous, but I just didn't have the time. I rode this twice, and the second ride was definitely better. But on to the next coaster. I'll review this ride in a separate video. The next coaster is Diamondback. This was my very first B&M hypercoaster, and it was terrific. The ride was smooth, fun, and provided a ton of airtime. It was quite intense at moments, but it was still tons of fun. The splashdown at the end was cool, and the line was kept short most of the second day. This is the best airtime by far that I've gotten on a B&M coaster. I rode this 3 times, once on the outside and 2 times on the inside. The outside is better, but both were very good. Now on to the next coaster. The next coaster is a dud, in my opinion. Flight of Fear, the Premier Rides launch coaster, is the next coaster. The ride has inversions in the dark, and I am not a fan. I don't like rides in the pitch dark, and I'm just not a fan of rides like that at all. The ride was rough in my opinion, and I wasn't a huge fan of the inversions as well. I just don't like rides like this, and for that reason I only rode this once. The ride's restraints also seem a bit uncomfortable as well. Let's move on to the next coaster though. The next coaster is Great Pumpkin Coaster. I don't have much to say about this E&F Myler kiddie coaster. It's a kiddie coaster. Not much to say. I only rode this once for obvious reasons, so let's just move on to the next coaster. Next up is Mystic Timbers, my first GCI wooden coaster. And my first GCI is now my favorite wooden coaster. It is fun, smooth, and provides a ton of airtime. It has a twister layout, and it was one element in a bank turn after another. It was awesome. The drop was surprisingly steep as well, and there was a ton of airtime on this ride. I rode this twice, and I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed, and it is easily my favorite wooden coaster. Let's move on to the next coaster. Next up is my first B&M Giga, Orion. It's fantastic. Yeah, I love this ride. The forces are intense, but not too intense. It is very fast, and you get an ample amount of airtime as well. This ride is just so much fun, and it really makes me love B&M. It is so re-rideable, it's crazy. I don't care how many Gigas or Stratas you've been on. You can never prepare yourself for how high you're going. I can say enough good things about this ride, though. The operations were great, and I know Kings Island is known for famous night rides, and I got a front row night ride on this ride, and it was by far my favorite coaster ride of all time. It is so fast and intense, and it may just be my favorite coaster of all time. I'm very undecided between it and Steel Vengeance, but you'll know that later this year when my top coaster rankings come out. I love this ride so much. I rode this 4 times, and by far the front row night ride was my favorite. That is Orion at its best, and it may be the best ride I'll ever have on any roller coaster. I gotta stop this rambling at some point, so let's move on to the next coaster. The next coaster is Racer, the PTC racing wooden coaster. And I got to say, this is my favorite racing coaster I've ever been on. Sure, I've only ridden 3, but this ride is long, smooth, and gives some decent forces. It is a great classic Woody that I can appreciate very much. Also, shout out to Kings Island for having 4 train operations on this. Sure, it's a racing coaster, so 2 can go at once, but still, it's crazy. I only ended up riding this once, but once I get back to the park, I'll definitely re-ride this. It also helps when you win, and sadly I didn't, so hopefully I'll win next time. Let's move on to the last coaster. The last coaster is Woodstock Express. This is the Junior PTC wooden coaster. It is pretty fun. It is a great family coaster, and I don't have much more to say about it. I know, I'm not the type of guy to give an in-depth review on Woodstock Express. I only rode this once, so let's move on to more of my thoughts on Kings Island. Yeah, I had a lot to say about the coasters here. So let's talk about some other things I have to say about the park. There are other rides at the park too. One Seeker is fun and it is a great observation ride. The log flume, Race for Your Life Charlie Brown, was okay. I wish I got more soap though. Boo Blasters on Boo Hill was underwhelming and I wish it got updated, but I'm probably spoiled by Ghostwood Estate at Kennywood. Lastly, the Eiffel Tower. It is my favorite observation ride by far and it's not close. You can stay up there as much as you want, and I got most of my photos and videos on the Eiffel Tower. That's it for my flat rides / other rides. It's pretty short, but my coaster reviews were so long, so I thought I should shorten this part of the video. Let's move on to food. I only had 2 meals at the park. The first meal was chicken tenders and french fries at the Fest House. It was good, and I got so much food with the meal, and I was stuffed. The seasoning they put on the fries was very interesting as well. I also got Panda Express in the Fest House. It was also good, but not too much to say since it is Panda Express. That's it for food. The food at the park was pretty good, and the ices and drinks I had were also very good. The atmosphere is what I want to talk about next, and man, it is great. The park has a happy feel to it. Everyone wants to be at the park, which is not the case at some parks. The employees are insanely nice as well. I've never met nicer people at an amusement park before. Every employee was willing to help, and the operations at this park were also the best I've ever seen. 3 trains on almost everything, and fast dispatches were the normal. The atmosphere of Kings Island is truly special, and it is the best atmosphere I've experienced at an amusement park, period. Let's move on to my final thoughts on Kings Island. My final thoughts about Kings Island. Kings Island is a fantastic amusement park, and I really can't wait to go again. The park was also decently affordable. This is easily one of the best Cedar Fair parks and one of the best parks in the entire country and maybe even the earth. Well, that is it for my Kings Island trip report. I will talk about my experience at Soak City, the water park, some other time. Thanks for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.